What's going on, guys? I'm Dan. This is Scented Waters, and today we have a review for you from the House of Parfums Vintage. But before we go any further, how about you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and hit that bell. So sometime between the tail end of 2017 and the beginning of 2018, Parfums Vintage came out with their cross between Dior Sauvage and Pineapple Vintage, and came out with X Batch, which was very popular for good reason. It smells very good. It has that Dior Sauvage DNA with a slight bit of Pineapple Vintage in it. Very popular, but a lot of complaints for it was that it was too piercing, and also that the longevity wasn't there. For me, it actually lasted a long time. It actually smelled better on my son than it did me, but I still enjoyed it just as much as he did. When it came to the popularity that came along with X Batch, there were still a lot of complaints that came along with it. When it came to the longevity of it for some people, and also the overuse of the Dior Sauvage DNA in this one. There was a lot of people were hoping for more of the Aventus vibe or the Pineapple Vintage vibe, and Parfums Vintage listened and came out with X Batch Intense. If you've seen any of the Pineapple Vintage renditions, you know what the presentation looks like, but this one says X Batch Intense on the front, Ural on the back. When it comes to the bottle, it's very clean, very classy. It's one of the best looking ones I feel for a dupe house or a clone house or whatever you want to call them. And the labels also have been improved to follow along with the rest of the Pineapple Vintage line. Nice wooden cap, sprayer, classic sprayer that they have, never disappoints. Before I get into the scent of the fragrance, how about I get into the notes? For the top notes, you have pineapple and black currant. For the mid, you have bergamot, neroli, lavender, and Virginian cedarwood. And for the base, you have patchouli, vetiver, and ambroxan. When it comes to the first sniff, first thing that I noticed is the lack of the piercingness that the original X Batch had. That one was a very big time factor for some people, that people just did not like the piercingness from it, which Dior Sauvage, the EDT, a lot of people complain about the piercingness from that one as well. So with X Batch Intense, they definitely dialed back the sharpness. There is no sharp piercing note at the beginning like Dior Sauvage EDT has. Another thing that I noticed is the pineapple is a little bit more prominent in this one. You smell a little bit more of the Pineapple Vintage Intense rather than more of the Dior Sauvage note or Dior Sauvage vibe. It definitely smells a lot fruitier, just for the fact that the Pineapple Vintage has been bumped up in this one. In my opinion, it feels like this one has been just a little bit blended a little bit better. Comparing the original X Batch and X Batch Intense, where this one dominated more in Dior Sauvage or the Sauvage vibe, this one is a little bit more blended properly and a little bit more balanced. Not a little bit more, actually a lot more balanced when it comes to the Pineapple Vintage Intense and the Dior Sauvage vibe. This one I feel is a lot smoother compared to the original. The sharp note's not there. If I were to give a percentage on how much of the Sauvage vibe is in both, where the original had more of an 80-20 ratio, leaning more towards the Sauvage, in my opinion, the X Batch Intense has more of a 55-45 percentage, still leaning more towards the Dior Sauvage, but you can definitely tell Pineapple Vintage has been way boosted up in this one and a lot smoother. It's a very balanced, more balanced fragrance. Still, like I said, leaning more towards Sauvage still, but not by much. I've been asked the question, is it kind of like the same thing like Dior Sauvage with the EDT and EDP? No, it's not like they use the EDT for the original and the EDP for this one, because you don't get that star anise or the cinnamon vibe in this one whatsoever, because there aren't any of those notes in this one. It is just more of a balancing situation, I feel, with less piercingness, which I feel that the pineapple really cut down on the sharpness of the Sauvage vibe in this one, in my opinion. When it comes to the dry down of X Batch Intense, I did notice that the Sauvage vibe was bumping up a little bit more. Not that it was just as much as the X Batch, the original, but you do notice that the Sauvage vibe was a little bit more dominant than the Pineapple Vintage, but the pineapple does stick around throughout the whole fragrance, rather than this one barely having any pineapple in it, and pretty much during the dry down came to like a 90-10% ratio of Sauvage, where this one was still high concentrated in the Sauvage vibe, but the pineapple is still there. It keeps it very sweet and keeps it pretty much at bay somewhat. When it came to projection for X Batch Intense, I got from 2 to 2.5 hours of projection, and longevity I got 8 hours, 8.5 hours. Honestly, a lot better than I did with the original X Batch. Not by a whole lot, but I'd say like about an hour and a half more, because for me it lasted like about 7 6.5 to 7 hours, the original, where this one has lasted me at least a good 8.5 hours. No problem, at least for me. As of right now, X-Patch Intense only comes in one size, which is a 50 ml, which runs for $79, but eventually in a few months or less, it will also come in 100 ml. Does X-Patch Intense smell different enough from the original X-Patch to warrant a purchase of both? In my opinion, yes, because I personally like the original, just with the sharpness and all this stuff, but the longevity wasn't as long as I'd like it to be. But this one just smells a little bit sweeter and more pineapple-y because of that pineapple vintage bump up, that I like both of them, to be completely honest. Giving X-Patch Intense a rating 1 out of 10, I give this a solid 9. Giving X-Patch the original a rating 1 out of 10, I give it an 8.5. I like them both. This one I like a little bit better, but just because of the sweetness of the pineapple in it, but this one is still solid as hell. If I were to run out of both, would I purchase them? Yeah, both. I'd still get them both. And in my personal opinion, if you already have X-Patch Intense, definitely get a sample of this before purchasing it. Don't just go by whatever reviewers are saying. If you are very interested in this one, definitely get a sample first, because who knows, you might like it, you might not. My opinion, I like it a lot. Your opinion might be different. So there you go, guys. That's my take on X-Patch Intense. Let me know in the comment section, do you have this fragrance? Do you plan on getting it? Do you have the original X-Patch? If you do have the original and have this one, what's your thought on both? Let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and hit that bell. X-Patch Intense from Parfums Vintage. Great solid release, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, still scented water.